section of today's panel. I'm going to ask you maybe one last question about this recent events that Iran filed, the Islamic Republic filed an unrelated complaint against Canada at the ICJ one day before the PS752 arbitration deadline. In your opinion, would this have any bearing on this case? And whether or not this is similar to the hostage diplomacy that we've seen from the Islamic regime in the past?
Great question. My hope is that it will not affect the case. The ICJ is an independent body. The judges are independent. They're professionals. They should not be affected by this kind of maneuvering. Iran's claim is that Canada has undermined the doctrine of state immunity by allowing people to take Iran to court or try to seize its assets. Is there an argument to be made there? Presumably there is, but I don't think Iran is making that argument or starting this claim in good faith. It's obviously intended as a sort of a reaction to this. And as you say, I mean, Iran, regrettably, Iran's regime has a habit of engaging in hostage diplomacy. Often it does this with actual people that it holds as hostages. Mm-hmm. We've seen this play out recently in Europe where they exchanged an aid worker, a Belgian aid worker who had been held for no reason in exchange for like a known terrorist. So they engaged in this. This seems to be the legal equivalent to that. It's, you're going to take an action against us, we're going to concoct some story and start a claim against you. But I'm hopeful that the ICJ will see through it.
Okay. If I could just add one word on that. I think there's also an element where they've seen past conduct, they've negotiated past resolutions to these issues short of an ICJ decision in the past. I'd be surprised if they weren't filing their own claim against Canada in view of having some leverage and some asks of their own in a negotiation down the road if this is not taken through to a judicial conclusion at the ICJ.
But they did not really follow the typical path to file for the ICJ case either. So do you think there is any even possibility of this going forward?
I honestly, I haven't reviewed the claim in enough detail to opine on that. There's not one typical path to the ICJ. Each international instrument that you are acting under contains its own dispute resolution clause that sets out its own path, and Iran's claim is just different and acting under different international law than the four affected countries under the 1971 Montreal Convention here.
Okay. Well, I do like to ask if anybody has any final remarks that you want to make before we open for questions and answers.
I'd actually like to add just on this last question as well that each of these cases before the ICJ, it's a separate and distinct case, as well as this case that Canada and the affected countries have brought forth. It's different parties because it consists of different states. Mm-hmm. The facts at issue are different, and the legal obligations that the judges will be asked to evaluate are different. So while I can't speak as to any political motivations of bringing the case, I can say that certainly before the ICJ, these would be treated as two different cases with different questions, facts, and analyses that the judges have to carry out.
Very good. Thank you very much.